Yeah, recording. There we go. Welcome to the G&T Sessions. Everything that shits us about business and one thing that we love. And we've got a really kick-ass topic today, Gerda, haven't we? It's something that's been swirling around in lots and lots and lots of conversations over the last week or two. I think you and I have crossed paths a couple of times in these conversations. So it's a good time to be talking. I'm going to let you, it was your idea to talk about this today, so I'm going to let you introduce that while I finish sharing all the things in all the places.
All good. I'm happy to kick us off. I feel like I need to first and foremost apologize to the visual audience for my undried hair that is very, very wet. I just told Tess earlier on, I don't know what look I'm going for here, what decade I'm from, but I haven't bought myself a hairdryer. So that's why you're getting the wet look today from me. And I had a run, I had a shower, but I'm all nice and refreshed. And coming back to the topic of the day, of course, I actually told Tess, I think we need to talk about this, but I couldn't recall whether we've had this conversation before on the G&T show, because it feels to me like I speak about this very often. It feels to me like I hear Tess talk about this very often. I not only feel, I know it, right? I also have noticed more and more conversations with it popping up. And I would like to believe that maybe those conversations is about us talking about it, but a lot of it is also an indication that we really need to talk more about it, right? And I'm hopeful that today's podcast and this live stream will give us an opportunity to go a bit more in depth to what we can normally go when we're just answering a question in a Facebook group. Right. And the title, I tried to type it out, it confused me because maybe it is confusing, but it is about all these limiting beliefs that we have in our mind that then leads to self-limiting behavior in our practice, and in turn really stops our practice from growing at the rate it could potentially grow, and to a place where we can have a practice that's not going to burn us out, because that's the goal at the end of the day, right? To create proper business, one where you can remove yourself from it, should that be what you choose to do, where you create a sellable asset, but doing all of that in a way that doesn't burn you out and doesn't burn out your team, right? And I think that a lot of people are very stuck in their practice growth because they are stuck in their their mindset growth, and it's all as a result of self-limiting beliefs about what we can and can't do, what we should and shouldn't be doing as business owners, but especially also as helping professionals, and all the rules and regulations around all of that stuff, right, which can be very scary. And I guess for us, when we think about that, the indication or the trigger for you to show that you are dealing with a self-limiting belief is normally one or other challenge that you are having in your practice. Okay, and so we really look at it. We see people ask all these questions, which seems like very specific operational questions, really, right? But the answer is more a mindset answer, because unless you elevate your thinking around it, it makes it very hard to address it on an operational level.
Yep.
Am I right?
Yep. Yep.
Most
100%.
certainly. So that's 100%. The context. So that's the context. So we thought what we might do is we'll look at 2 or 3 examples where we see these happen very commonly for practice owners. So do you want to kickstart us with the first, probably the most common example, Tess?
Yeah, okay. I'm just fixing up my little bit here. Sorry, I'm fiddling with my phone. So I think the most common example is people worrying that because of where they're located and who their clientele is, that nobody's going to be able to afford their fees, and therefore this assumption that they have to keep their fees low. And, you know, in the case of private practices, obviously that often leads to an assumption that you have to bulk bill because of your client population and the socioeconomic area that you're in. And there are so many answers to that assumption. that we could spend several podcasts going through all the answers to that assumption. I think what's probably easier is to look at examples of successful practices who have burst through that assumption. So I certainly am very familiar of private practices in rural locations where there is a lot of unemployment, where the private practice is not bulk billing anybody and charging, a fee that is similar to what would be charged in a metropolitan area, and still they can't stem the flow of referrals to their practice.
Yeah.
How are they able to do that? They're able to do that because they're providing excellent service. They're standing firm in what they need to charge for their business to not just survive, but to be sustainable for the long term, for themselves to earn a salary, for their staff to be able to be paid a salary. And also their reputation is rock solid. So they're working on their communication within their community. They're working on their communication on social media. They provide a lot of free resources on social media and elsewhere. And they also have a really clear framework of what advice to give to people who can't afford their fee. So they know what other agencies in their communities are available that are government or non-government organisations that don't charge a fee, or they know of telehealth options with other organisations that don't charge a fee. What I love about those practices is they don't assume that some other private practice will bulk bill this person. I think that's a really important thing to get clear. They assume that free services are the services that are funded by government or non-government agencies and are intended to be free. And this holds true not just for mental health practices, but I see the same in medical practices. In rural settings where the medical practice has said to the community, we can't afford to be here unless we charge a private fee. It just is what it is.
100,000%. I cannot agree more with every point that you've made. And just listening to what when you were speaking, there's so many points in there. Hence you say we can have several podcasts about this, right? So the stuff that really stands out there for me is that self-empowerment as a rural practice, or maybe a practice located in a lower socioeconomic area, that if I know that there are going to be people that can't afford my services, empowering myself with the knowledge, i.e. knowing what resources is available so that I can provide that value to clients that call in, right? So important. The other really important thing as you were talking there that was popping into my head, a lot of people's objections when they are living rurally or they're living in a lower socioeconomic area, they want to serve their community. Right? They want to serve them. They want to give people access. And we are so very much aware that, for a lot of people, money is a barrier to access, services, which again, then comes back to making sure that you know where to refer them to. It also is important to know that you can't be everything to everybody. Just like you can't do that in your personal life and in your social life, you cannot be that in your business life. And the sooner you realize that, the better. As helping professionals, we try and drill that into our clients, right? You can't be everything to everyone because there'll be nothing left over of you at the end of the day. And it's the same for you as a business, and you need to realize that. Charging your worth, another point, right? Let's say if you are in a lower socioeconomic area, in a rural area, by actually charging your worth, what it is that you need to charge in order to run a successful business, allows you to be able to offer wages to clinicians who will then be willing to come and work for you.
Yeah.
Okay, it will make it a financial option for somebody to go, you know what, I'm going to leave the hustle and bustle of the city, take me and my family, go and live in a rural location, but I still need to earn money and, you know, pay my mortgage and put my kids through school and, you know, all of that type of stuff. We can't attract other clinicians to our locations if we don't have the money to pay them. And unfortunately, if you have a bulk billing practice, you're not going to be able to pay somebody.
No.
Right? You're going to maybe be able to pay them, but you're going to go, you know, short of money pretty quickly. That's just how it is.
Yeah, and I think so. I think whether you're employing team members as an employee or whether you're recruiting contractors to your business, if you're not charging a reasonable fee, then the argument will always be around percentages. For contractors, the percentage argument doesn't go away when we're recruiting contractors. And if you are not charging the appropriate or an appropriate fee in your practice, then the clinician's take home money isn't going to be very much. So of course they're going to argue with you and push back about percentages. If your practice is established on a bulk billing basis, you could offer them 100% of the bulk bill rate and then still not necessarily be happy with the take-home money that you're offering for them. So your capacity to compete against government agencies and against other practices you're making it that much harder for yourself. So if your practice charges a decent practice fee and a consulting fee, you can then also look at then the model, whether you're employing clinicians. It gets easier to afford to run an employment model if your practice is based on a decent fee charging basis. And also it's easier to discuss percentages with contractors from the perspective of the take-home dollars, because their take-home dollars is high, and as you increase your fees at regular intervals, as you should, they're getting a pay increase whether or not the percentage changes. So the pressure isn't on you as a practice owner to take home to your business less money to cover all the bases, because that's really what contractors are asking. If the fee stays the same and they want a higher percentage, they're asking you to take less money from the business to run all the things that you have to pay for, which is, you know, people forget to look at it from that perspective, especially practice owners when they're feeling pressured to increase a percentage. They're forgetting to look at the fact that means that they will have less money, even less money, to run their business. So it all has to start with the fee structure and a healthy fee structure to keep your business viable. And then the conversation with team becomes much more flexible about employment versus contracting and how much money the individual takes home at the end of the day. Got to start there.
And I think what is really clear as we're talking about all of this is how this one potential self-limiting belief has the potential to impact so many aspects of your business, right? It's not really just about, you know, how high should my fee be? Do I need to offer concession rates? Do I need to bulk bill? It goes beyond all of that. These decisions impact so many aspects of your business, and it impacts the potential future and sustainability of your business. So we are all in this business to serve our clients, to serve our community. But if you don't run it as a business, you will not be there long term to do just that. And that really is the reframe, that in order for me to fully serve my community sustainably over the long term, I need to run this little setup, even if it's just me by myself, or I've got a team of 20, I still need to run it based on the same business principles in order for me to still be here in 6 months, 6 years, 16 years, however long I want to do this thing.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I think, linked to that is this notion as well that everybody needs to be charged out at the same. Well, there's within teams, I'm having a lot of conversations at the moment about the fee structure and how it relates to organisational structure. I think too many private practices, and we are moving towards a new model in my practice, where we're really looking to organisational structure to predict or to dictate or to base fee structure on. So seniority of clinician dictates fee, not what endorsement you do or don't have as a clinical psychologist or not a clinical psychologist. So and linked to that, I think a lot of practice owners sometimes feel a little bit uncomfortable charging more than the clinicians in their team, especially if they have clinicians in their team who are clinically endorsed psychologists and they themselves are not. So there's a lot of self-limitations there for a lot of practice owners around, one, we should all charge the same, otherwise I'm going to feel bad about what I think my team members are thinking about me. And we can talk about that at length. And also I'm not eligible to charge more than my team members because I'm not endorsed as a clinical psychologist or whatever it might be. And I think really when we look at it from an organisational structural perspective, if you look at any other industry in the world, you'll see that the CEO, everybody wants to work with the CEO. Everyone wants to choose the CEO to be their personal accountant or their personal advertising executive or their personal hairdresser. You know, if the business is in the name of a person, then everyone wants that person to do their thing for them. But that person remains one person with only the same number of hours in a day as the rest of us. So of course, in any other sector, you will see that person's fee be the highest as part of a gatekeeping measure, so that people are then steered towards working with the other members of the team, one. And two, so that person, the CEO person, is generating enough revenue to cover the time they have to take away from revenue generation to run the business. And also so that their team has jobs going forward. So I'm interested on your take on that, Gerda, because I know you and I have very similar views on it, but that whole idea of an organisational structure as the underpinning for a fee structure, certainly something we're starting to implement in my practice. And it's certainly something that I do encourage others to look at in their practices.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with everything you've said. And two extra points that I could probably add on there in addition. I mean, me personally, although, you know, being a clinician is very separate from being a business owner, I often use my clinical skills on myself as a business owner. So what I would suggest people ask themselves is, as a general rule, you know, does the CEO charge their hourly rate out at the same as everybody else? Or as a general rule, when I go to other consulting businesses, do they charge different people out at different rates, right? So, you know, a solicitor will be X amount, a paralegal will be Y amount, the assistant will be A amount, right? As a general rule, there is different payment structures. So why should we be all different? That's a very important reflective question. And I think a lot of times it is our own beliefs around self-worth and money and what that means that is coming in and messing with our ability to run our practice as a business.
That's right. And I think it's the helping mentality coming into conflict with the business owner mentality. So the CEO mindset and the helping mindset. I think another way of looking at it, you know, the simplest advice that I got from my accountant was that, you know, anybody that you're paying in your business should be generating triple what you're paying them, which is great. Just a great rule of thumb to help you looking at minimum what your person needs to be charging or needs to be generating each week to cover their salary. So if you look at other industries, you know, the CEO, of course, is paid more. You should be paying yourself a salary. And if you're not, then first of all, start thinking about that. But in order for the CEO to be paid a CEO salary, then of course it makes sense, if we look at my accountant's advice, that the CEO salary has to come from somewhere. And so the CEO also needs to be a profit center. You know, they need to be generating enough revenue that they are also not only covering their own salary, they are also adding to the money that the practice needs or the business needs to put aside for unexpected things, for profit, for future stuff, for all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Okay.
Most certainly. And your business, any business, irrespective of size, cannot grow unless there's somebody at the helm doing the strategic thinking, keeping us on course with the vision, looking at opportunities, looking at the threats, making those daily decisions, focusing on business development. The business can't grow unless there's somebody doing that. And you, as the principal, as the business owner, are best suited to do that, right?
Yeah.
So you need to ask yourself, do I want my practice to grow? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then I'm sorry, you're going to have to allow yourself then to step into being that CEO, irrespective of how big your practice is, and charging yourself out as you are the business owner. That's just how it is. And I think the other part that I do like also about having an org structure is if we think about traditionally in private practice, right? It is like you come in, you're a clinician and that's it. And then we ask ourselves, why do our team leave after 2 years or 3 years? Well, it's because, like, where do they go, right? And it's again, we need to learn from other businesses. As a general rule, most businesses has a career progression pathway for their people, right? Otherwise, people are going to get bored of doing the same thing. Yes, I know there will be some people that are happy just to do the same thing day in, day out, week in, week out, month, year in, but most people aren't like that. And I think a lot of times the people that we hire into our practices are very similar to us. They share the same values in terms of want to contribute, want to achieve stuff, want to make a difference, right? Want to have an impact. So you need to have a career progression pathway, i.e. an org structure, which is really the framework of that pathway for them to go, okay, this is the next thing that I can do here, or that's the next thing. And I think that's really important to have.
Yeah, that's right. I think that's right. And I think, talking about CEO and, being the CEO and having that mindset is something that I think a lot of practice owners, especially if they are a practice of 1 or 2 people, a lot of practice owners feel really uncomfortable stepping into not only that mindset, but into that language of being a CEO, being a director, being a business owner, owning a company. That's all language that we assume belongs to other industries. But unless we start looking at that language and owning that, so again, this whole self-limiting belief around, oh, I'm not a CEO, I'm not a director, I'm just a psychologist, or I'm just a social worker, or I'm just this or just that. Well, if you're owning the business, if you're if the tax department comes to you, if ASIC comes to you, if you own the business, you're responsible for all of the financials, then sorry to break it to you, but you're a business owner and you're a CEO, unless you're a partner. And if you're a partner, that's a different then you co-directors or co-CEOs. And I think the idea of everyone charging out the same, that's all lovely if you're operating a cooperative. And a cooperative is where everybody shares all of the expenses equally and everybody earns the same amount equally. And that's a very lovely ideal, but I would argue that even if everybody is sharing all the expenses equally, I bet you are still not having equal share of responsibility. You still have all the responsibility to rally all of the things. If your name is on the lease, if your name is on the electricity bill, if your name is on everything else, unless you've set up a company structure where everybody is a co-director of the company, so it's a true equal responsibility and equal split, that's a different thing. But that's a rarity. It's very, very rare to see practices set up like that.
100%. So many truth bombs that we're hearing today. I was going to say test bombs. That's awesome. All right, and maybe is this number 3, a final thing that often pops up as well, when, especially when I speak to private mentoring clients, this belief that, you know, and it normally is triggered by somebody resigning. So, you know, get a resignation from a star clinician or a star admin person, and you go into this tailspin because you believe that this person is absolutely irreplaceable, right? They're the best on the team. I rely on them so much. They know all our stuff, and what am I going to do now? And you just go down that rabbit hole of overwhelming anxiety and stress, right? And I've been there.
Same.
More than one. Sometimes it takes a couple of goes before you learn the lesson. And the lesson is that nobody is irreplaceable, right?
So true.
Because if you believe that people are irreplaceable, that you're going to have all those emotions of anxiety, worry, stress, and concern. And I can tell you hand on heart that I've learned that no one is irreplaceable. And for a long time, you know, I made that first switch into the mindset of knowing no one is irreplaceable, but I had this little tail end onto it, except myself, right? I'm the only one that is, that can't be replaced, until I replaced myself with a principle. Right. So even I was replaceable. So that's a bit eye-opening, and I'm not sure always whether the ego likes it that much, but it's the truth, right? It's about, if you truly build your business, people can come and people can go, and you will be okay if you've got the systems, the processes, and the frameworks in place. And it's really about trusting that you're doing the things that you need to do in order to, yes, be disappointed if somebody leaves, because they've been such an integral part of your practice. You have a relationship with them as well, and be sad about that, but still have the knowing that we will be okay. And we won't only be okay, the next person is gonna be their amazing self, and they're gonna bring a lot more. This normally happens to the table, that's going to build on the contribution that this individual has made.
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly right. So I think, you know, I've even down to the point of I lost my practice manager a few years ago, and she left with all the knowledge, well, not all of the knowledge, but the vast majority of the knowledge. And we as a practice, from an administrative perspective, really had to start from the ground up. And the admin team I've got now, they did so much work to rebuild our policies and procedures, like this, the manuals that we had. There was no written documentation when the other person left. So obviously we learned a lesson, make sure there is good documentation. Secondly, don't let one person hold all the knowledge. And thirdly, nobody's irreplaceable, because the practice didn't die. I didn't die. Nobody else died. Everything continued to function. And it just took a little bit of time for us to get our heads around discovering what we didn't know, because we didn't know what we didn't know. And that was probably the most stressful part, was not knowing what we didn't know. But we soon figured that out. We figured that out when things went wrong, but we figured it out. And I like what you were saying about, you know, this idea that I think a lot of practice owners are still very much irreplaceable in their businesses. And it's something that I encourage people to address. You need to not be the primary income generator for your practice. Because if you get hit by a truck tomorrow, who's going to pay your receptionist's salary, or will they have to lose their job?
Yeah.
And that was for me, that was the number one inspiration for me, thinking about, well, how do I make myself redundant in my own business? In a way, redundant's probably too big a word, but redundant more or less in my business. So, and you've talked about this before too, Gerda, you know, about, you know, making sure that you've got all of the systems in place, so that if you get hit by a truck tomorrow, neither one of us would have practices that would have to close.
Yeah.
People would go into mourning for a significant period of time, I know, but the business would continue to run. The business would continue to run. Now, I've actually, as you know, I've now gone next level and sold. So I have 2 practice locations like you do, and I've made sure they're separate entities like you have, and I've now sold one of those. So I have actually replaced myself. in one of those practice locations. And that comes into practical reality next month. We're in transition phase at the moment, but that Alison takes over next month. And that has actually been quite an exciting experience to sort of look through her eyes and see, okay, what does she need to know? What does she need to have in place? What can I help her preempt and things like that? So we are all replaceable, but we need to plan for that. So we need to get over ourselves a little bit. We need to stop having the control freak thing going on. We need to stop being so frightened that people are going to ruin our business or ruin our reputation if we hand over some control or if we delegate some tasks. You know, my practice manager has her fingers right in my bank account officially, so the bank knows it's her when she's in there, but she has her fingers right in the bank account. She pays all the bills, she works out all the salaries, she pays all the pays. I don't do any of that stuff. And she has a written policy so that she's actually now training somebody else to be able to do that as well. So within the team, you have to be able to trust that 99.9% of people are going to do the right thing and they're going to do their best in their job, and until they don't, and when they don't, you address that then.
Exactly. So the limiting beliefs that comes in there that often people express is, and I hear it so often, I can't delegate that, or I'm the only one that can do this thing, right? Like, no, look there, you've got people paying your bills and stuff. Mine is exactly the same. Both my principal and my accounts person have cards to the principal's got cards to the business to go shopping on the practice cards, and the accounts person, they both have got access into the bank accounts, right? They probably go into those bank accounts more than I do for the practice side of things, right? You have to trust, and it is so freeing when you allow yourself to do that. I'm not saying don't have checks and balances in place, right? Everybody needs to be accountable. You still need to know what's going on in your bank account. So for me, my principal does our cash flow forecasting. She sends me a report on stuff. I can look at all that stuff. I can go into Xero myself. There's checks and balances, but thank goodness I don't have to do all that stuff myself anymore, right? Because it has freed me up to do all this other business development stuff and have a greater impact and build the practice. So it's so freeing if you can just recognize that limiting belief, that story that you're telling yourself that I must do this, or I can't give it to someone else, or it's faster if I just do it myself. No, it's not.
Oh, yeah, it's actually not. It's
No,
actually not. It's actually
it
not, because well, this is why it's not. This is how it's not faster to just do it yourself. Okay, think of all the times when you're trying to do something for your business that requires you to concentrate and not be interrupted. So you might be planning some social media content, or you might be writing a blog post, or you might even be trying to write a report, but you need to concentrate. And then someone's emailed you from your team saying, do you know how I do the thing? Or do you know where the thing is? Or when can I spend this money buying a new chair? Or blah, 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 blah. And you think, it would be just quicker if I just do that thing. And so you do that thing, and yes, that thing might take 5 minutes for you to do, but you've then lost momentum on the bigger picture thing that you were working on. And so you've lost your train of thought, you've lost your mojo, you've lost your momentum, and it takes you twice as long to then get back into. If you do get back into it, if you're like me, I'm juggling so many balls at the moment that if I lose momentum on something big, it can be days before I get back to it, because then the next important thing has already pounced onto me. So it's really important that you don't buy into that. It'll only take me 5 minutes to answer this email, to buy that thing online, so they don't have to think about it. It has to stop. Stop
exactly. And and I will tell the people listening and watching that when we talk about these things, we've gone through it, right?
Oh, totally. Absolutely.
And it's like hindsight, and I think, believe us, we've got your best interest at heart here, because it will save you so much time. And we know that not having enough time is all of our biggest struggles, right? The last time I had to go through this mindset thing was when I hired my PA, right? I think Abby's been with me now 2 years already, 2 years. And it's like, I knew I needed a PA. Logically, I knew it, right? But I had this, oh my goodness, I don't have time to prep to take someone on board, or time to think about what to teach her, or I need to get all these things in place so she can be productive when she comes on board. Of course, none of that was going to happen ever, right? I had to just bite the bullet. And what I did for the first month was literally sit next to her, laptop by laptop, for her to learn what it is that I do. Okay. And it probably took around 3 months, because I am a control freak. Everything needs to be done just like this, because private practice success is like my brand and my reputation. But after 3 months of training her, she now just does the things, right? Yes, maybe I invested time in training her up, but she's like rocking and rolling. She can run my business. If I had to be sick for the next couple of weeks, she'll just keep everything pumping away. Yes, maybe she can't do the actual delivery of coaching and stuff, but all the back end stuff is sorted, right? And it has saved me so much time. It is amazing the difference it's made. But I had to get over myself. I had to stop telling myself about all these things that had to be done before, because what if I waste money paying somebody that's just sitting around? Well, she might be sitting next to me, but she is observing, learning, reading, and I am worth that investment of money to get that support, and it's paid off 100 times over.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's exactly right. I mean, I think, I guess that brings us to another issue of what people aren't willing to spend money on. And how it holds us back. I think the very first example of that is when people are looking at needing admin support, and the story that they will tell themselves is they can't afford it. So my answer is, what fee are you charging? That's my first. I usually answer that statement with that question. Let's look at your fee structure first and foremost. But oftentimes it is just a story that you actually can afford. When you look at how much time you spend on administrative tasks yourself, and how much you charge for your clients, and how much it costs to pay a receptionist, before you know it, you've freed up so much time in your week that you can see an extra couple of clients a week. For some people, it's even an extra couple of clients a day that they could fit in if they wanted to. Easily pays for the cost of an administrative support person, or for a virtual support agency like Halo. I think that people underestimate their capacity to pay for these things, and they overestimate what it's going to cost, and they haven't done their research to check that out. And I think then the next thing is guilt. I can't possibly pay for fill in the blank thing that's going to make my business run more smoothly, or make my life more efficient, or XYZ, because fill in the blank excuse. Well, actually, it might even just be getting a cleaner in. I've actually just hired a cleaner for my apartment here in Melbourne to come once a fortnight, because I noticed that I was initially falling trapped to the idea that it's a smaller home. I don't need a cleaner. I can do it myself. And of course I wasn't, because I'm too busy. And then getting cross with myself that the carpet was dirty, or the bathroom needed doing, or whatever else. So stop it. And so, like you said before, all the advice we give is because we often have to give ourselves this advice too. It's a nonsense. So for me, I did the research. I found out it was going to cost me half what I was paying in Hobart, because I have half the size of property. And it's going to free up so much, not just time in a practical sense, but also thinking time. It'll free up thinking time for me. So, not having to worry about those things. So think about the things that would make your business more efficient, even your home life more efficient, more effective, so that you do get that balance. I mean, people are often talking about wanting that balance between work and home, and the assumption that would be fulfilled by having their own business, then being disappointed that that's actually not what happens when you run your own business, unless you put efficiencies in place. And you have to get over yourself to be able to do that. You've got to stop telling yourself silly stories that aren't true.
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm yet to meet a practice owner that hasn't told me, you know what, Gerda, I've now finally hired either a virtual answering service or an in-person receptionist, and I regret it. Nobody's ever told me
No,
that.
no, I've
They
never heard
all
anyone say
tell
it.
me
Unless
consistently,
they're
it's the
the
best thing I've
only,
ever done,
it
and I
is
should have done it months ago.
absolutely, absolutely. The only time anyone says they regret it was if they've made a bad hire. You know,
Yeah.
nobody regrets having taken the leap to get help. And I think, you know,
Exactly.
that really needs to be
Exactly.
soaked in. Nobody regrets getting help. Yes, sometimes you'll hire the wrong person. That's fine. You can move them on and replace them with somebody else.
Yes.
But getting help, nobody regrets taking that step. And I guess busting that myth for themselves that they can't afford it, or it's too hard, or they haven't got time to train someone, and blah, 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 blah.
Because the fact of the matter is, and it always comes back for me to, so why are you doing this? You know, what is your goal? You know, do you want to build your practice? Do you want to grow it? Do you want to expand it? Do you want to scale it? If you don't want to, that's perfectly fine, right? I come from a country where your job as a psychologist is to be in private practice solo by yourself until the day you retire. That's how our industry works, right? I'd never even heard of group private practice back in South Africa. I'm not sure if they have it now, but not when I was there. It was just solo, and that's what you are. You know, so 100%. But if you truly want to grow, if you truly want to expand, right, then you need to invest something. And it's either going to be your time or it's going to be your money, right? It's going to be one of those two things. And you can't choose to invest your time and then, I'm going to be very harsh now, this is how I am, and then complain the whole time that you don't have time, right? Because you're making choice that I'm not going to spend money, so I'm going to invest my time. And I've had this very strong conversation with myself many times over in my time as a practice owner with 3 kids, right? A husband that also needs attention, right? There's only so much time that I have. So the sooner you can make that decision that you know what, it is okay to stop being a martyr with my time and spend the money and trust and have faith in me, that I know that irrespective of how much I invest, I know that I will make sure I get a return on investment because I do the work.
That's it.
Right? And it comes back to faith and trusting yourself and who you are as a person, that you will do what it needs to take. And therefore it's okay, you know, to invest money in yourself and into your practice growth. That's how
right.
And I feel very strongly about that.
No, I agree with you 100%. I think that we underestimate what it costs us to do things ourselves as well. You know, when we work in a service industry where our time is billed out, you know, by the hour, and we insist on doing things ourselves, what's it actually costing us to do that thing ourselves, instead of paying somebody else their cost to do that work, and we get on with the job of doing our work, which we charge out at a higher rate. But it also comes back around to that first question about charging your worth. If you're not prepared to charge the appropriate fee so you can cover the added cost of getting the help that you need so that your business can run more smoothly, so that your clients have a better customer experience, so that you don't burn out. All of these reasons why. It's not just, people make this assumption, well, if I'm charging this amount of money, then that's what I'm taking home in my pocket and I feel like I'm being greedy. You're not. If you're lucky, you're taking home, as a business owner, you're taking home far less than 50%. You're lucky if there's 30% in it for you as a business owner. And people overestimate the greed factor. You know, there's no greed. There's no room for greed in private practice. It's actually too hard to make it financially viable for greed to even get a look in. So.
Exactly. And if anybody is making judgments about practice generally, and practice owners as greedy, lining your own pocket type of people, that just tells me that they have zero clue, zero idea of what it is like to be in private practice. They've probably never been at the helm of especially a group private practice, you know, so I'm not going to take their judgment and put that onto me when they don't have a clue. Like, would you really listen to somebody that doesn't know what they're talking about? Like, no. So don't let those judgments attach them to yourself and your thinking and your behaviors, because they don't know what they're talking about.
No, that's right. They don't. No, they don't. Oh, yeah.
That reminds me, there's a Brené Brown quote, and of course I'm going to stuff this up, but it comes down to the following, right? I don't know exactly what book it is, but where it talks she talks about that unless your ass is in the arena, you can't comment, right?
That's it.
So unless your ass is in the private practice arena, building a business, doing all of this stuff, then you cannot comment on what we do and who we are, because you have no clue. That's just how it is.
Yeah, that's right. No, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think it's true. You know, business ownership. I think business ownership is, it requires you to be creative. It requires you to be quick in your reactivity from an informed perspective. You need to respond quickly, not be reactive in a crisis-driven way, but you need to be able to move quickly with changing sands, you know, changing foundations under your feet, because it changes every day. You've got people leaving, you've got people coming on board, you've got something that you weren't expecting as an expense, you've got tax, you've got this, you've got that. There's always something that you weren't anticipating, and you need to learn to roll with that stuff. And part of that is also learning that you just need to learn to filter out the commentary from those that aren't in your shoes. And that can include other practice owners, because not every practice is the same. Not every practice has the same overheads. Not every practice is the same structure. Not every practice is a group practice, and so on. You know, you really need to be careful whose commentary you allow in if you're trying to make changes for the betterment of your own business. Be very careful around that.
Yeah, because a lot of practice owners are still in scarcity, are still not running it the way that they should, right? And sometimes they just don't know what they don't know. And that's just the way that they've always done it. And you know, that's why when you ask for people's opinions, you know, take it in, but make sure that you get it from the right people.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Awesome. We have covered some ground. One of those people,
of course, is Tess Crawley. Tess, are you going to tell them about your CEO workshop coming up very soon?
Thank you for the prompt. Yes. Okay. So the 23rd and 24th of March, which is a Monday, Tuesday, I'm running a workshop, 2-day workshop here in Melbourne. And I very deliberately made it a Monday and Tuesday because it's a workshop that is structured on not just stepping into your CEO mindset, but actually actioning some of those strategies while we're working together across the 2 days. So I need it to be business days where you can step out and actually do some things that I'm going to ask you to do while you're in the workshop with me. I know. So some
that's
of the things
best way. That's the best way.
You're gonna leave having actioned some things. We'll be looking at. Yes, we'll certainly be looking at some of the stories we tell ourselves as business owners and how that limits us. We'll be looking at, you know, what it means to have a strategic vision for your business, what it means to understand the difference between being in your CEO mindset and COO mindset, so the Chief Operating Officer versus the Chief Executive Officer, understanding those two roles, because most small business owners do need to straddle both of those roles. Putting some plans in place for your business, some growth strategies for your business, and actually actioning some things while you've got the support, the cheerleading and the accountability of being on site with me and the others that are going to be present. So they're already I think I have about 6 people coming along already, and I only have room at the table literally for 12. Because it's a 12-seat table in the meeting room. So there's the meeting room that I've organised for the event. So
that sounds like an amazing event, and having only 12 people in the room is going to be such a personal touch of learning and getting stuff done. It's amazing.
I'm pretty excited about it, to be honest. So it's a workshop. So you might see the ads that I've got going around for the CEO checkup, your CEO checkup. That's what it's called. It used to, I've run it once before online as an online program, and it was called your private practice checkup. So some of the content is inspired by that program. It's much more about ramping up into really owning your position as the owner and driver of your business, even if you're a business of one person. One of the attendees is a business of one person. Who else is going to be there? There's several group practice owners going to be there as well. There'll be a mix, be a good, healthy mix of people coming. So I'm really excited about it. I'm really, really excited about it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And fully catered, so you'll get spoiled as well.
That's always an added bonus, between me and you and everybody else listening. I don't know how people can run workshops and not give food. It's like, it doesn't make sense. It's like, when I go to a workshop, I want to be fed. Thank you.
I want to be fed. Yes, we have good coffee nearby and we have good food. And depending on how many people there are, I will make the decision once I know how many people are definitely coming around the size and quantity of treats, because there's a lot of really good stuff here in Melbourne that can actually spoil the pants off people.
You make pavlova. I think
now you're giving me an idea.
Homemade pavlova for your attendees. I'm sure you're going to fill up that room even faster. I've watched your stories. You're very skilled in that.
The funny thing is, the weekend, so the Saturday, Sunday, I've actually got my Like a Boss, which is my Inner Circle program. I've got my Like a Boss participants coming and staying for the weekend to do a working retreat, and two of them are staying on for the workshop as well. So I don't know when I will find the time to cook a pavlova, but now that you've told everybody that I'm cooking them a pavlova, I may just have to find the time. So thank you, Gerda.
I know you can do it. I know you can.
Thank you. I'm multi-skilled.
And of course, the lovely Tess will also be at Elevate 2020 to talk about stepping into your inner CEO mindset. And that will be part of that fighting fears section, right? And of course, Elevate will also look at a lot of the systems and processes, some of which we mentioned today. I mean, structure is so important, right? And the two of those two things go hand in hand. You need the mindset, but you need the structure as well. And you can't have the one without the other,
that's
right?
Exactly right. No, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, so if you don't have your Elevate 2020 tickets as yet, be sure to hop onto the website at elevate2020.com.au and get those tickets before the early bird ends the end of this month.
Absolutely. Now you've also got your Ignite Your Practice open at the moment, haven't you? Is that right?
Yes, I do. I've already filled 2 spaces for this intake, so I still have 3 spots left, which is a 6-month one-on-one mentoring program. You start as soon as you are ready, and actually if you do sign up before midnight on the 15th of March, you get your Elevate ticket for free. That is like, how much is that?
That is such a bonus.
That's like more than $1,000 worth of value if you sign up for the Ignite Your Practice. But maybe I'll just put a link in the comments, because I don't have a link. So maybe I'll put my email in the comments, because you can only enroll into that via talking to me via email. So we can make sure it's the right fit for you.
That's a good reminder. I will also make sure that the link to the CEO workshop, the CEO Mindset Workshop in Melbourne, 23rd, 24th of March, it's going to be upon us before I know it. So yes, I'll put that link in the comments too.
And remember to go into the Facebook groups as well and do it there.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Perfect. All right. Well, we might wrap up this episode of the podcast. So I'll stop recording now. Thank you so much to those who are listening later. Don't be afraid to send us through your comments and questions, because you can probably tell we're pretty passionate about this topic. One of the biggest things in many, many business sectors, mental health profession in particular, but many business sectors, is the issue of burnout. And one of the key indicators is having to work too hard to make everything work. And we can trace that right back to some of the stories that we tell ourselves that limit our growth and limit our capacity to charge our worth and so on. So we will talk to you again in our next scintillating episode. But for now, thank you, Gerda.
Thank you very much, and goodbye, everyone.
Now let's stop our little recording. There we go.